Are there parts of yourself that you don't like and even try to hide? Welcome to your shadow self. What is the shadow self? The term the shadow was made popular by psychoanalyst Carl Jung. He saw it as the uncivilized, even primitive side of your nature. We all have the shadow self. It is generally made up of the parts of ourselves that we deem unacceptable. For many people, this means things like our sadness, rage, laziness, and cruelty. But you might also see us uncivilized and unacceptable things like your personal power, your independence, or your emotional sensitivity. When it comes to the shadow, it will be a seemingly unacceptable attribute you see in another person, and the projection often comes couched in blame. For example, you might feel that everyone around you is lazy and selfish. The reason you never get ahead in life is apparently because they are all too self-absorbed to help you. If you looked at yourself honestly, you would likely find it's you yourself who has a tendency to be self-centered and lazy. When people learn about their shadow side, they often wonder, is my shadow side bad? Well, although we might want to see your shadow as negative, this is not true. The shadow is rather what you yourself perceive as dark and weak about yourself, and therefore needing to be hidden and denied. But this depends on your own perspective and your levels of self-esteem. It is only through our own effort to learn who we are and cultivate self-acceptance that we can recognize and embrace our shadow, and then benefit from the many gifts the shadow offers. Some people learn about their shadow self and wonder, how do I get rid of my shadow self? Well, you can't not have a shadow. No matter how nice or happy someone may seem, they have a shadow side like anyone else. And not trying to have a shadow only backfires. When we repress and deny things about ourselves, they do not disappear. Rather, they can grow in power and cause us more and more difficulties. Carl Jung felt it wasn't just individuals who had shadows. We also have a collective shadow where people united their shadows as groups or as societies. An example of the collective shadow at work would be the Holocaust, where people united their hatred at one race, and the end result was a great tragedy. So now that you've learned a little bit about your shadow self, you might wonder, why do I need my shadow? When we recognize and face our shadow, we can become more whole and balanced. The shadow gives us gifts like boundary setting, personal power, and emotional fluency. It might also help you to be more creative. Jung connected the shadow to creativity. Perhaps the more free we feel emotionally, the more free we are in the ways that we think and accomplish things. So how do you get to know your shadow self? Well, there are certain things you can do. The shadow can be one of the first things we face when we start attending therapy. The creation of a safe space where we can talk to someone who isn't personally invested in our life means we find ourselves saying things we didn't even know we think and feel. Other ways to access your shadow include journaling and working with your dreams and the archetypes you find in them. Of course, looking at what you are constantly blaming others for tends to be a direct route to your shadow self. What are the things you least like in other people? Does that characteristic exist within you too? It's important to recognize and understand your shadow side, but not over-identify with it. If you are going through a period of low self-esteem or depression, for example, it's not the time to indulge in shadow work because you are not in the headspace to recognize your strengths. Jungian analysis is of course a helpful way as a route to exploring your shadow, but really any sort of talk therapy that seeks a bigger picture of how you became the person you are today will be just as useful. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this little discussion of your shadow self and learned what it is and how it can help you a little bit better. If you did, please consider subscribing to my channel. We'll talk to you on the next one. Bye.